Day 5 of the November-December 97 7-day retreat in Springwater. You may recall the last 2 talks before the break. In which it was mentioned that it's not enough just to be one with the feelings, the fears, the angers, but also to understand thoroughly their root, where they come from. And then the question, is there something beyond this root of fear and anger, wanting? To several people, this came as a surprise that I would speak in this vein, where it seemed to these people that I've always said, be with the moment, be with what's there. And not just surprise, but some concern, which was quite similar for different people. This was all said in individual meetings. Some uncertainty. Am I doing it right now? Just sitting so quietly, thoughts ebbing away. Am I doing enough? What does she mean? I should go deeper? Should I start pushing again after feeling free from that kind of a response? Pushing for the root. So, whatever all these reactions were, am I doing it right? Am I doing something wrong? Should I do more? Where do they come from at this moment? What is this feeling, thought, package of I? Other than a package of feelings and thoughts, stirring, bringing discomfort, anxiety, anger, self-righteousness in their wake. One person in a group mentioned, if I start thinking about this and that, the things that are maybe mentioned in the talk, questioning this, questioning that about myself, the mind gets all confused and more thinking, trying to find the answer. And then the reaction comes up, enough already, get back to just being here. The breathing, the sounds, the sensations. There are different ways of questioning, and our conventional way of questioning which we've been educated, brought up in it, is to ask a question and then either have other people give us their thoughts or think ourselves more about it. All our schooling, academic training is in that direction, asking questions and thinking about a solution. And somehow or other it doesn't quite work in meditative inquiry, because this is felt as so much obstruction to have a head full of activity. One realizes much better than in one's daily life how this separates one from the breathing, the sensing, the simple being here. So, in questioning what is the root of fearing and desiring and wanting and angering, does it stimulate the thinking mind? Or is it a call to watch, to observe, to be here in the presence of a question that has been asked? Maybe the question doesn't appeal to one, then let it go. But if it grips in a way, yes, what is the root of all of this? Because it seems I can be with the fear, can be with the anger, and maybe it dissipates in this being with them, and then the next moment it's there again. And with that, a reaction to that fact, often a despair or resignation. This is just the way I am. This is just what I are. This is just the way I am. I can't change it. Or why does it keep coming back? What's the good of sitting quietly and having a moment of openness, in which there is no fear or wanting? When promptly it returns, if a thought arises or somebody says something to me, doesn't this create the question, where does it all come from? Not historically, not chronologically, not psychoanalytically, but presently. This is what we're asking in talks like this. And at this moment of looking at it, this is what happens in a talk. I'm looking at it. I'm looking at the source of this. Not later on when sitting quietly and there may be no thought or no question arising, but right now. Can we look together? Or does the mind immediately say, what does she want me to do when I sit quietly? Which means not being here with a very vital question. At this moment of 40 people sitting together in a spacious hall, quietly, wondering where does fear and wanting arise from? And maybe the very first response is, I don't know. If the thinking mind is relatively quiet, because if it feels stimulated to think about it, then it will go on thinking, remembering, projecting, analyzing. But it's also learned that this separates from being here and not knowing, capable of hearing a question without knowing the answer. And without immediately looking for the answer in brainy ways. quieting into the question or into the not knowing. Whence fear and wanting, angering, envying arises. And a question which anchors its way in the body without having a ready-made answer, allows in our daily interactions to throw more light on what brings about anger or fear. Not just in our daily interaction, it happens right here. Someone writes one a note in the kitchen, housekeeping. Anger arises, fear, reaction. Where from? What is the basis of it? Do I see myself in a certain way and this way has been violated by the other person? Other person makes me feel inferior, telling me what to do. What is the me? What is my way? How do we listen to other people and to our responses? Out of a me source? What is my right way, my needs? Or openly? With that network at ease, at peace, in abeyance. Earlier in the sitting, it was very quiet in this room, but there were sounds of someone or several people going up and down in the dining room, back and forth. How does one listen to that? If one hears it at all, one may be so engaged in thoughts that one doesn't hear sounds around one. But perceiving it, hearing it, what is the response? Does one listen out of the mind of what should be and shouldn't be? No one should be walking up and down, disturbing the quietness of this hall, which can easily trigger anger, objection, resistance. Or does one hear it wondering, what is this person doing? What is going on there? That is already a different response, bringing about different reactions. If I don't know what it is, but would like to find out more about it, then the body-mind remain open, not in their reactive mode of it shouldn't be like this, which brings not just present patterns but ancient patterns of anger. Whatever, one can watch it in oneself. Or one can listen to it like the wind rumbling in the rafters. Which one will find is the freest mode of being. Because it does not push any buttons. So the question, have I been doing something wrong in sitting quietly, openly? Does this come from the very source of meanness, what I should be doing, and immediately disturb the openness of this instant with guilt, discomfort, or irritation? And is it possible, first, the quietness of sitting openly, not a question in mind, still, caw, 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 and breathing, that's what's going on. Then wondering, am I doing something wrong? What should I be doing? The unsettling response of the body and mind. And then wondering, where does it come from? And maybe seeing into this complex of thoughts, memories, ideas, and physical reactions, which I call me, mine. Not intellectually saying, well, it all comes from my big ego or my little ego. But the clarity, the quietness to see through it. To see through the power of thought about myself. The power of thought about myself to unsettle a peaceful moment, transforming it into fear about doing wrong or anger about not doing right. Incredible power. To see that, to let it be so transparent including the physical reactions, transparently felt, not taken seriously, not elaborated in storyline, but just felt, seen transparently, openly, out of a being that has no source, no root. Therefore, no fear and no longing. Most of our lives, we live in heavily conditioned ways. This body-mind is thoroughly conditioned, not just by its heritage, genes, DNA, ancient animal behavior patterns of territorialism, this is my turf, don't enter it, rivalry, my partner, my spouse, don't look at it, don't enter it. Greed for food, is it greed in animals? It's amazing to see sometimes these documentaries in which there's a fight over who gets, even the mother pushing away the cubs to get the food first. But be careful to project human ideas upon it, because our animal heritage is laced through and through with thought and story and remembrance, which is not the case for animals. So, a body heavily conditioned by ancient patterns, heavily conditioned socially, psychologically, environmentally, culturally, conditioned by this amazing power of the brain to create imagery about oneself, about the others, about quote unquote one's life, and live in those images, removed from the immediacy of this moment, which has not yet become an image. It is just here, breathing, seeing, hearing. Before the image is imposed, the interpretation has taken place. What does he mean by this? Does she have it in for me? And in sitting retreats for people, this clarifies itself to an amazing extent, how much we live in image, and that it is the image that hurts. When one feels attacked, one may not even have been attacked, but the brain structures it in such a way from past impressions, powerful residues that blur the input and are able to project onto other people what may not be there at all. Because there is no innocency of just listening openly. It's so cluttered with past traces, manifesting right now at this moment of interacting. And in this conditioned way that human beings are burdened with, stuck with to an immense degree, there is the fear of not keeping what we hold dear, of losing what we possess, of being attacked, of being made feel inferior when we want to be treated as superior. The fear of our world of imagery and story coming apart, not maintaining itself, being hurt, being infracted or transgressed. The fear of coming to an end story, of my life ending, losing one's husband, one's lover, one's best friend. Where does it all come from, these fears? Again, can one illuminate it, sit quietly with it, not knowing the answer, but let it sink deeply? Wondering what one truly is beyond all of this constructed scenario, full of uncertainty, or constantly maintained and patched up certainty, which doesn't last. What am I in this mess of reactions? and emotions and feelings. Deep down, I don't mean directionally. There is no direction in which to go. The depth refers to the fact of not going with the superficial waves, but listening quietly, without knowing the answer. Can we make a statement that as long as there is attachment to image of myself, superiority or inferiority, being of importance or being of no importance, as long as there's any attachment to being something imaged, remembered or projected, there is inevitably fear about being hurt. In the image realm, not really hurt, although the body may churn with anger or pain. So then, how do we listen to the anger and pain? With no need to make any more out of it than is already there manifesting. Just wondering quietly, where does it all come from? Where does it come from? Right now, at this moment of sitting quietly. Openly? Is that possible? Is it possible for one moment not to need to defend anything? Maybe aware of a rumbling of the defense network, but just listening to the rumbling, which doesn't mean anything except a conditioned response to a conditioned thought in a space of openness and quiet listening. So at this moment of being here together, is it possible to be here as nobody special, no importance or unimportance? What comes up, what I am, is picture and word. Attachment to it, or seeing through it, out of quiet being. If the question is asked, what am I? Does the brain bring up more pictures, more words, more names, more remembrances, more projections into the future? And can those be seen for what they are? Conditioned pictures not telling the truth about myself. Or a limited truth. What am I? not a mantram, not a brainy question, but an opening, not knowing. Ka, 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 ka. Breathing. Ji, ka, ka, ji. The question, am I doing it right, is sort of a tentacle growing out of a feeling I am somebody capable of doing right or wrong, deeply conditioned, invested with emotional content, good feelings or guilty feelings. Can we see it? Can we let it expose itself? Display itself in this quiet viewing. Which brings up a question. Somebody asked the other day in a group, maybe we should leave it for tomorrow, but I will at least mention it. What is my responsibility in all of this? Somebody had said that anger just arises and dissipates. There's no one doing it. It's not happening to anyone. This is something how it was put. Just comes and goes with no one there. And the question was asked, do I have no responsibility? Or rather, what is my responsibility? We could use a lot of time and space just to look at this question. Where does it come from? Does it also come from conditioning? I'm not saying all questions do, but does it? One can look, one can question and inquire. After the meeting in which this was mentioned, walking down the driveway and seeing some deer grazing and then looking, then switching with the tail and bouncing away a bit and grazing again, I wondered if any deer is bothered by the idea, what is my responsibility on this earth, to my young ones, to my clan, to human beings. So, what do we mean when we say, what is my responsibility? What are we asking about? And are we asking on the thinking plane or watching at the same time we're asking? I want to act responsibly, meaning thoughtfully, meaning sensitively, meaning maybe not just wrapped up in my own fears and desires, but considerate of others. I want to act so that whatever is done is also watched in terms of its consequences. What does my action bring about? in myself and other people? And do I desire these consequences? Do I want to hurt people or create anger, confusion in others? Is that what we mean by acting responsibly? Sort of being in touch, not just with myself, but with people around myself. And with the consequences of actions, triggered here and there. What do my words result in? I say something in a talk, someone says that talk was right on, so helpful, so clarifying. Someone else says, it was so confusing, so upsetting. So a tentacle comes up and says, did I say something wrong? And allowing that tentacle to bring about some looking, some contemplation, some further clarifying. Because this is why one talks. Not to confuse things, but to clarify things, but confusion happens. So let's look at it and pick it up. It is a continued process, an unfolding from moment to moment. Doing and responding, reacting and looking. Trying to understand oneself and each other. Is that acting responsibly? Responding not just from the isolation chamber of my wants and fears and concerns and pleasures and pains, but stepping out of that house into the open, where there are other people with very similar concerns, very similar reactions. And seeing if we can respond and react to each other in a new way, not just from conditioning, which we're all burdened with, without exception. This human body is conditioned. And not just possible to push delete buttons and get rid of all of that. So, is it possible to listen and be in an unconditioned way in this conditioned world body? To view it, feel it, see it, observe it freely in its conditioned ways and understand it thoroughly. Here first. That's the danger. I understand all of your conditioning and you're really very badly off on account of it. This is the clearinghouse right here, the place for investigating and discovering. And what is discovered here holds for all of us to one degree or another. Do we see that? Right now as the crows are cawing. It's always amazing to me when somebody comes into a meeting or writes a letter and they have a real thorough insight what they talk about or write about is very often what is being discovered about oneself in a new way, not defensively, not apologetically, not explaining, but the wonderment of discovery. Discovering freely our limitations. We will end here for today.